with, we'll start with Mankinta Holloway. Mankinta.
Thank you so much, Scott, for the introduction. My name is Mankinta Holloway. I have the pleasure of serving currently as the court administrator slash director for Oklahoma City Municipal Court. I have been here on next Saturday will be my first year completion. I came here by way of Birmingham when I served there as the court administrator for 13 years. Been in the field of justice over the past 26 odd years. Hard to kind of say that out loud and kind of age myself a little bit. But it's been a great thing, and just excited about the opportunity to talk about muni courts and give some clarity to some things that people may or may not understand, and hopefully have some great discussions around the work that we do.
Actually, we're going to go out of order, and we'll come back to you in a minute, James. But Tracinda, I wonder if you could introduce yourself and maybe give us a word or two about the court where you and Mankinta work, because you work in the same court. Is that right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. So my name is Tracinda Langdale. I have the pleasure of serving as the Assistant Court Administrator here at the Oklahoma City Municipal Court. I have been in the municipal court my entire professional career, which is about 12 years, in different aspects, and I have gotten to see the change that criminal justice reform, the impact that's had throughout those years. And so, yes, Mankinta and I, we are in the same municipal courthouse. We are in Oklahoma City, we service a pretty large population and land size. And we are also one of two court of records in the state of Oklahoma, the other being Tulsa, which makes our work just slightly different from other typical municipal courts.
Thanks, Tracinda. And Jason.
Hello, I'm Jason James. I am currently the court administrator for the City of Dalton Municipal Court in Dalton, Georgia. I'm the immediate past president for the Georgia Municipal Court Clerks Council. And then I am a NACM Court Champion, and I've been a member of NACM since 2013. And fun fact, I actually started my court career at the City of Oklahoma City Municipal Court.
Thanks, Jason. And as I mentioned, my name is Scott Griffith. I work for the Vermont Judiciary. I've never worked in a municipal court. I've worked in Louisiana, Texas, and now Vermont, and have spent most of my time in the court world working in the administrative office. I've been a NACM member since the late 90s and served on the NACM board, and had the opportunity at several conferences to facilitate in a live setting this kind of chat event. And I really like it. And I'm so grateful to the membership committee and to the board for deciding to do this again. And one of the things I've really enjoyed with the expert panelists, both on the tribal court side and in this context, is just getting to know some people who I might not have gotten to know otherwise. And I've been away from municipal courts for a while. We don't have them here in Vermont. And so Mankinta, Tracinda, and James, talking to you all about the issues that you're facing, the issues of interest to you, was a reminder to me of how important municipal courts are. And I'm so glad that we have this time with you, not only today, but for our follow-up session. I just want to make sure I mention that the chat is available for those of you who aren't familiar with WebEx. The chat's available, and Whitney is offering to monitor the chat. Please feel free to drop questions or comments in as we go, but also remember that we've got some time at the bottom of the hour where we'll open it up and hope to have some give and take there. So what we want to start by just talking a little bit about the municipal courts in context. And James, maybe we'll come back to you, because when the four of us met and we're talking about framing the issues, you talked a little bit about this, as did the others, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the unique nature of municipal courts, their home rule entities, which may mean something a little bit different in across jurisdictions, but that means something very specific. And I wonder if you could just share some thoughts about that. You're muted.
Was trying to avoid the feedback. um, so basically, home rule in Georgia just means that it empowers local governments to manage their own affairs. It keeps the state from interfering with municipalities. And so, we always strive to maintain that balance of, support from the state and justice partners from the state, but at the same time, maintaining our independence.
Manquinta, you're 1 year in Oklahoma City, but many years before that in Birmingham. Can you reflect a little bit on on your thoughts about that, and maybe if there are contrasts or comparisons between the two jurisdictions you want to highlight?
Yeah, we had similar, as Jason just put it, we have similar things here, and even in Oklahoma City, we have home rule here, and it helps with us being able to do some things that are a little bit different. Just like here at Birmingham, we had the same concern. Larger jurisdiction courts in Muni are completely different than some of the smaller courts that are Muni for resources sake. And so there are a lot of times when we're trying to push legislation or get things passed, it solely impacts the larger courts and it doesn't really impact the smaller jurisdiction courts that are similar, just like us, because they think of Muni, they give all courts in the Muni capacity are the same and they're completely different. So our interests a lot of times being, as Jacinda said earlier, Tulsa and Oklahoma City are the only courts of record. And so things that impact us don't always impact other municipalities because across the state, there are over 200 municipalities who have courts. And so that's a major disadvantage for two cities who are trying to get things passed and get things done. So that creates some complications.
Jacinda, can you talk a little bit about the impact that on operations that the unique status that your court has, the reliance that there is on funding sources that are different from state courts, and just what that means in the day-to-day life of the work that you do in Oklahoma City?
Absolutely. So our court cost, at least for Oklahoma City, our court cost is what funds the operation of prosecution. And so we do have some general funds that come in, and that's based off of our city taxes. Our model is very dependent on sales tax in general here in the city. And so if those things are down, our revenue is of course going to be down. And because there is this that we're funding our own prosecution, sometimes that narrative in the community is like we are prosecuting to make money instead of that our focus is really more on community and lowering those recidivism rates, and being able to one day maybe untie those from each other would be beneficial in how we're operating and the narrative in the community.
Thanks, Jacinda. Even though we've got home rule issues in play here, and the fact that the courts are embedded within the municipal government and the municipal landscape, there is interaction that you have that you need with state court partners. And Jason, will come back to you. And if you could talk a little bit about your experience, maybe in OKC, but also in Georgia, where you are, working with state partners or state entities that may not always feel like partners. And I'm thinking the state legislature and the AOC, Administrative Office of the Courts.
Sure. We have a lot of participation with the Administrative Office of the Courts. I think when we were having these discussions, I was discussing House Bill 304, which currently the Georgia Municipal Court Clerks Council, that's a bill to recognize GMCCC statutorily. One of the issues that came up during COVID is our organization had actually put down a deposit for a hotel, and the conference got canceled because of COVID. And the GMCCC actually lost that deposit because they said, well, we don't recognize you as a state organization. And so that was one of the things that really pushed us to look for that legislation to be recognized statutorily and to kind of have that clout to be recognized. So we started that in 2021. The bill, like Georgia's legislature runs on a biennial, so it was the second year of the biennial that we launched that legislation. Didn't make it through the House the first year, and then the second and third year it passed the House, but we never made it through the Senate. And then the fourth year, which was last year, it passed the House again as House Bill 304, and then it just kind of died in Judiciary Committee on the Senate side. And so this year we've actually contracted with a lobbyist. And so again, we're trying to get this bill pushed through. We've got crossover day coming up on March 6th, which means, that any bills that haven't passed one side, have to pass that side. So we already have that it's passed the House. We're just trying to get it through the Judiciary Committee on the Senate side. We do have some extra help this year because the judges actually attached one of their bills to ours. So we actually have the full force of our municipal court judges council too.
And what about with the Administrative Office of the Courts?
Yeah, they've been helpful, trying to get us, assistance in getting that bill passed. But I'm frequently down at the Capitol talking to the people with the Administrative Office of the Courts. We have a wonderful liaison, LaShawn Murphy, that helps out. So they're kind of our landing space when we get down there, and our advocate.
Am I correct, James, in recalling that there is someone at the AOC who's a dedicated liaison to the municipal courts?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be LaShawn. Yeah.
Okay. Mankinta, can you reflect on that a little bit? The relationship that you have with state partners, legislature, AOC?
I can kind of talk more about Alabama than OKC.
Sure.
But what I've learned here in OKC is that there are laws that are created that prohibit municipal courts from even establishing like what we would call a specialized court. And so we can't do drug courts or anything like that because the state mandates that we can't. But in Alabama, we can do that. It was a lot different. AOC relationship was a lot different. The only thing there, and like I'm sure Jason's talked about it when we had our conversations, is states were kind of, specifically in Alabama, trying to get all courts to go underneath using the software application, so all the information is under one umbrella. The complication with that is it's not a one size fit all, and so you lose autonomy over what works in your court specifically. And so I'm not really a big advocate for coming under one umbrella. I understand the benefit from that, and so there are times in the Alabama Office of Courts or even in ALC here, I think there are some times where it's focused more on state courts more so than muni courts. Even when you talk about collection, I know Tristina mentioned it earlier. In Alabama, fines and fees went to the general fund of the city. Court costs went to the state, and so in federal government. So we were collecting court costs. It didn't come back to us at all. And the other piece of that is funding prosecution is a part of it, but we also fund defense counsel. And so there's a contract that we have with legal aid that we're mandated to do, and it's over $500,000 that we are putting in every year to pay for that service. And so the court is actually paying for everything for everybody. And then there's funding limitations to what we get because we collect revenue, but we're not a revenue generating entity. And so we want to make sure we always push that into the narrative because people, as Jacinda highlighted before, people think our role and our responsibility in what we try to do every day is to collect money. Now we have an obligation because of legislation to collect funds and revenue, but that's not our purpose. We're just doing it because of obligation, not because we statutorily said we want to do.
Mankinta, do you know, this is a question from Peter Kiefer. Do you know what the rationale was around prohibiting municipal courts from operating treatment courts?
I don't in Oklahoma. I don't. Other than primarily it's for the kind of cases because here we don't do domestic violence cases at the community level in Oklahoma. I'm not accustomed to that because in Alabama we dealt with every type of case other than felony cases, and so there was no limit to the kind of cases that we could have. Here, there are some restrictions on certain types of cases that don't come into community courts, and so I'm just thinking they're more focused on the fact that they deal with more drug cases, and they want to make sure that everything is happening there and there may not be a time where, because I know when I was in Alabama, there were times where people were being drug court for us at the community level and in drug court with the county for another charge because it was a higher charge. And we had to collectively, purposely work together to ensure that we weren't over requiring people to do certain things and that what they may do at the county may supplement what we were asking them to do at the community level. And so it was a great partnership that we had. I think that may be some of the restrictions. Being new to the space, I'm trying to figure out how to do that because I think we could help people if we had an opportunity to do some of those other things because we deal with them every day here.
Well, and so with respect to the helping people, that's a segue into something we all talked about when we met. Tracinda, there's no shortage in many communities of need for help. And of course, we all know that sometimes people get access to that help through the court system. Can you talk a little bit about the systems that are set up in your city government that that impact the court or that you can call on to help people who may need it, who are coming to municipal court in Oklahoma City?
Absolutely. So I will plug here. Oklahoma City, specifically the municipal court, has a little different of a program. We see some models. I have learned through Mankinta describing some of his experience in Birmingham that other probation models do operate like this in other municipalities. However, we have a specific community outreach program in the courthouse that helps connect individuals to tying back quickly to the specialty courts, we have small pieces we're able to do. So we do have a community docket that we're able to take out in the community that people sign up for and they agree to terms. But the kind of stick to that is it's all voluntary. We can't force anybody onto that docket. It's all voluntary. But we're able to connect them with resources and those other agencies throughout the community. So like umbrella nonprofits that have case management, justice navigation, and can connect to like state DHS, the public safety department if they're needing their driver's license. And so we have a team that's able to do that. But outside of them, we would still be able to rely on those organizations to help them navigate not only the justice system, but getting the resources they need for why they're continuing to maybe be in the space.
Peter Kiefer has asked another question that I think is appropriate to take up right now, which is, are there any ideas under discussion on how to decouple administering justice on the municipal court level from funding? And it was a little over a decade ago, the events in Ferguson, Missouri, and then over the year or two that followed, all of the investigations and reporting on that. And there was a lot of attention to addressing just this question. And so there may be people on the phone, in addition to our panelists, who have some thoughts about that or some experience with any work that's been done within your jurisdiction, within your state to address that. Maybe we'll start with our panelists, James, Mankinta, Tracinda. Has there been any discussion about this issue in the places where you work?
Yeah, I'll start that conversation. In Georgia, to decouple justice from funding. I just got off of a call with Georgia municipal court clerks and judges, and we were discussing that there right now the budget. Some of these cities, I'll just say this, like municipal court, there's about 400 municipal courts in Georgia, right? About half, maybe more than half, do not have the funds to even think about that. Municipal court, unfortunately, we know it's not a revenue source, but in some of these smaller communities, it is unfortunately a revenue source for the city. I'm in a fortunate situation because I'm at the city of Dalton, and they have several sources of revenue, and that is not a consideration for the city. One of the reasons why I actually went to work for the city of Dalton. I don't have those conversations with a mayor or a city administrator where they say, "Hey, what's the revenue look like?" We don't have that. Basically, it's how many cases are we moving? How is the appearance of the court to the public? And so those are the kind of things that we think about. I have a fantastic judge who works with people in the courtroom, and so I feel, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I feel like this is an excellent court where the perception is we're pursuing justice. And you got to think, municipal courts in Georgia last year disposed of 1.4 million cases, which is more than any other class of court combined in the state. So you take state, probate, magistrate, superior court, you lump them all together, and municipal courts disposed of more cases. So I think we're winning that perception more in Dalton. I worry because some of the clerks that I speak to in other cities, they're not only the court clerk, they're the city clerk, they're the police clerk. It's not something you want to hear, but it's the truth, and we're just trying to change the way that is in Georgia.
Mankinta and Tracinda, one of the things that came up several times in our recent conversation was the need to educate folks on municipal courts. And that's the sense I got from our conversation, was that you all were feeling that there isn't just a need to educate the public, but also some of your city partners. And Mankinta, you said something just now that you said when we met about how important it is to make sure that people understand that municipal courts aren't revenue generators. But with respect to this issue of educating people on the role of municipal courts and why municipal courts are unique, essential, and that kind of thing, I wonder if the two of you could share your thoughts on that. Who needs to be educated, how you might be doing it, and what you think some of the myths and misconceptions are.
Yeah, I'll let Tracinda go, and I'll follow up after her.
Absolutely. And so one, I think that that we are revenue generating. Of course we do. There's an obligation. There are pieces that are collected and are kept by the municipal court or go into the general fund. But I think that a misconception is a good portion of fees actually go to other partners. They go to state agencies, to, of course, CLEAT. And so we are collecting on behalf of others in spaces, and we keep a very small portion. I think one of the fees, we keep a penny out of every like $15 that we collect. And so that is definitely one piece. Kind of tying into the question with Jason, we have done things that show removing that we are trying to like jail people for fines or owing money. We do not arrest on anyone owing money to us only. It's arrest for missed court dates. And that ties into one of the bigger misconceptions and issues, is getting you to come into court, because if you come in, we have those options for accountability, payment plans, but getting you in the door and understanding that we're not here to prosecute you further or provide more punishment is a misconception in the community. We have more people go to jail just for not coming into the courthouse. instead of that we have programs that they would benefit from and be able to just resolve if they came in.
Courtney.
Hey y'all, thanks for being here. I'm the co-chair of the membership committee with Whitney, and this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart as I am in St. Louis County and following 2016 and the unfortunate set of events in Ferguson, I got the pleasure to be over all of the municipal courts in Missouri. And so this is something that I've spoken a lot on. So the question would be, you say that you're not jailing people for not paying, right? But you're jailing them for missing court dates. Is it missing court dates for them to come to court to tell the judge why they couldn't pay? And is the bond amount the amount that they owe the court?
So for right now, under current legislation, we had a House Bill 2259 implemented a year ago. There are different arrest warrants for fines only. So one piece of that is a cite and release. And so if they have not withheld their obligation for their payment plan that they signed a contract to, they're given notice if they're stopped by an officer and asked to come in. Past that, if they still are not appearing, an arrest warrant can be issued. The amount that's owed is not it's not a higher bond amount. It is what's owed to the court, but they are seen by a judge typically within 24 to 48 hours. And oftentimes the judge takes into consideration and that balance may be suspended. I will say, as far as our specific court, those cases are typically not arrested on. They usually, even if it's more than once, a lot of times they get that cite and release to give them the opportunity. If they are arrested on a case they've never pled to and it's not been adjudicated, the judge may review those cases that are outstanding. But our at least courthouse, based on that House bill, it's very rare that they're taken into custody on fines alone.
But an arrest warrant is still issued for them failing to appear to show cause as to why they didn't pay.
An arrest warrant can be issued based on that House bill. Our court very rarely issues those. They typically stick with the cite and release, asking the person to come in. And the court, sometimes the court is to show their justification. We hold 8 indigency hearings a week for people to come in and go through that process. But some of them are that they had a review date for their payment plan, and the obligation was to appear for court to either show proof or just get more time. So it's really more focused on that no matter what option you may need, you're not appearing for court dates, is how our, in the way that House bill was written. Yes, but there is, based on that, in other places throughout Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, arrest warrants can be issued after so many subsequents not coming into court.
So to that point, then what are we doing to really further challenge the idea that it is a revenue generating court or purpose, like a jury, like that's the municipal court's purpose? What are we doing to combat that by those kinds of legislation and policy?
Can I chime in on that? Because I think this is where you get to that sensitive space in conversation. I'll say talk to legislation, because courts don't create rules or laws, and then when we don't comply with those, people can get removed from the judiciary. Because I know in Alabama, when you even talk about a fine and fee schedule, it's established by legislation.
Right. Yes, exactly. It's like where do you go?
Well, when you're talking, Courtney, you're talking to courts as if the court did it. And we're just honoring what's been created. And I think that's the big misnomer. And we talked about that in our conversation and building to this fireside chat. Is a lot of times when you even look at Ferguson, the people who created the rules are never the people who are brought into question. And so the court is completely neutral. And I say we are revenue generation. We collect revenue. So
100%.
we're collecting it for somebody else. And because courts don't create any business, nobody from the court goes out and write tickets. Nobody from the court goes out and deals with any animal cases or any code enforcement violations. Those things come here. And so the neutrality, of course, I think is getting diminished because other bodies are regulating how the court functions. And so when that tampering is happening and people are appointed, because in most jurisdictions the judges are appointed by council, right?
Correct.
And so if council appoints you and you're not leaning into some spaces that council wants you to lean, it becomes problematic. The great thing that bigger jurisdictions have, to Jason's point, is we're so focused on people and how we serve people that we create partnerships, we create programs centered around helping people get to a better place. Because there's a balance in there from courts, because people say you're taking advantage of impoverished people until they infringe on you. And so then when you don't deal with the businesses and people going into the businesses and doing what we call trespassing or panhandling, and then now they want courts to come in and intercede. And so then it's trying to find that happy median to where you're still saying these are still people. I'll give you an example. When I was in Birmingham, and we did a lot of specialized dockets. To Peter's point, I put it in the chat. We had a meeting with the business owners because the city said that we needed to meet with them. This is the mayor's office and the council, because they were getting all these complaints. And so the business owners came in and we had this big conversation, and they asked a hard question. They said, why are these individuals being released from jail? And so our question back was, what do you mean? They said, well, this person I know has a trespassing. This person I know is continuing. I said, but there's a due process. And once a person is found guilty and he or she gets their punishment and they serve that, we can't just hold people in jail. And they literally said, why can't you hold them in there forever?
Yes.
And so this whole thing that the court, to me, and I don't know how Jason feels or Jacinda feels, sometimes specifically in muni courts, we're getting pulled in multiple directions. Now, I'm a firm believer that some smaller courts are designed, specifically created for the purpose in which we're talking against, right? And then now you have these other courts who need this space because they can't rely on county, because they don't create rules to support the cities. They don't create things that impact how the city polices. It becomes this cluster of confusion. Because I know speed traps in Alabama. I'm sure there's speed traps in Oklahoma. I know there's speed traps in Missouri, in these little small towns. And, you know, it's like a pay or stay situation. And when you don't, they'll tamper with your driver's license. I think in Birmingham, we gave probably per year $3 to $4 million of community service. And we had to get creative, because even with community service, people who can't do work, physical work, how do you help them be held accountable to some degree without it being a dollar for dollar match? And so we did civil ethics, and we taught people civil ethics. We worked with the Disability Association to work with them in those spaces. So in larger courts, you have to be a little bit more creative, because there is no answer to how we serve individuals, and finding that sweet spot to ensure that everybody feels okay about what we're doing can be a little complicated, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the heart of it, right? And that's the questions. Like, you're asked these questions, and the court does have some discretion in some areas, right? But if you aren't trying to figure out how to balance, it's a very, very challenging situation for municipals. And like through the DOJ report here specifically in St. Louis, it talked about, you know, like, why is the bond amount something that's written on the warrant? You know, the bond amount is the amount that's owed in fines and costs. You know, what does that look like? What's the message? So we have learned to levy our discretion against maybe some less than what we would call great legislation from people that really don't understand the situation. Like, they have totally misunderstood the assignment. And so that exactly, those are all key things that are very, very challenging across the nation, regardless of if you mainly hear traffic cases, or you're in Texas where your limited jurisdiction has far greater jurisdiction than some other states. It's been a wild ride the last 10 years, but these were all very difficult conversations to have with all different kinds of partners. So kudos to you that are getting ready to take it on. Buckle up. It's worth it though. It really, really is worth it when you start to see appearance rates come up, and it's worth it. So kudos to you guys for sure.
And I do want to chime in too, because, you know, I feel like a lot of times we're kind of put in that situation where we need to advocate for, you know, for the people. and the Georgia courts have done a fantastic job. We actually a couple of months ago we had a meeting at the Home Depot office. They held this event, and we had an organization, a nonprofit called the Georgia Justice Project. I don't know if you guys have heard about it in the news, but basically they brought in a company called Ideas 42, and they do this work pro bono. And so what they do is they review our bonds, they review our failure to appear letters to make sure that they're clear for the public, to push down those failure to appear rates. And so that's something that the process that Dalton's going through right now. I mean, we're trying to use every bit of resources that are available to us to bring people to court, because in Georgia a couple of years ago we had Senate Bill 176, which changed the way that municipal courts could issue warrants for failure to appears and those things. So basically, if somebody misses their first appearance, then what we have to do is reschedule that for 30 days out. Like, nobody can have their license suspended for initially missing court. So after 30 days, then if they miss that second court date, then we can notify the Department of Driver Services, which will lead to a license suspension. If it's a must appear violation, then that would cause a failure to appear warrant. But in Georgia, as far as, I'm not saying, I can't speak for all municipal courts in Georgia, but as far as Senate Bill 176 goes, that has gone away. There are no arrest warrants for failure to pay. Like, if somebody's just not paying, it's only for failing to appear in court.
Ideas 42 is a great group of people to work with.
Yeah, they have been fantastic so far.
Yes.
Courtney, thanks for offering your perspective on this. That the topic and the experience that you've had and others are sharing could probably support half a dozen chats, right? I'm really glad you shared what your experience has been. We're gonna fully open it up here in a couple of minutes, but I just did want to share with the group and to our panelists. I'd invite you over the next couple of minutes to share your thoughts on a couple of things. But when we talked about topics that we wanted to talk about today, and we talked about issues in practice, we talked about budget and planning issues in the context of swings in revenue and resources available. We talked about HR issues and how the lines can sometimes blur for certain staff with respect to where they report up and who they report to. In Georgia, I'm not sure in Oklahoma City this was also true, but in Georgia, Jason, you talked about training and in particular certification issues, and then case management software. Before we highlight a couple of trends that we talked about when we met, any of you want to jump in on one or two of those topics and share your thoughts? You're muted, Jason.
Sorry about that. I'm that guy. But I lost my
certification was something that you talked a good about.
Yeah. So statutorily, a chief clerk for a municipal court is required to get 16 hours of training to be considered a certified municipal court clerk. And then each year after that, you're only required to get 8 hours of training, and then that's it. So no other clerks in the office are required to get any form of training. And so I've talked about it before, GMCCC, Georgia Municipal Court Clerks Council, what we've done, the organization is celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. We launched in July last year a court clerk certification program. We partnered with a company called Aurora, and just by using our membership dues and vendor sponsorships, we were able to create our own certification program. And so any clerk that becomes a member of GMCCC, then they can attend that training. It's an online training. They watch Georgia specific presenters, and then they take tests at the end of each one of the courses. And then if they pass those classes, there's 7 in the level 1 training. then they can be certified as a certified municipal court clerk. And then we also offer a level 2, which is a certified municipal court administrator. And we launched that level 2 January 1st of 2026. So super proud of that. That's just a grassroots organization that wants to see standards raised. And actually yesterday, I'm super excited to announce that we had our 100th court clerk in the state reach that certification. And then we also have 38 that have completed the level 2 certification. So we're pushing that. And I'm super proud of all the court clerks that have come together, court administrators in GMCCC.
Tricinda and McKinta, anything you want to put out there with respect to training, budgeting, staffing, recruiting, retention, technology? There's a long list. We're not going to get to all of it today.
No.
Huge list. In Alabama, I'll briefly talk about that. There was an annual requirement because in Alabama, clerks, we had magistrates. And so in Oklahoma, it's different because in Alabama, the magistrates are the one that determine probable cause, and the court oversaw that piece. In Oklahoma City, the municipal counsel's office, which is the city attorney's office, oversees whether or not a case goes forward, almost like a DA's office. And so there's a slower process. They have 3 years to file on cases, so it can linger on somebody. Thankfully, our office here has some things that they put in place to kind of push that forward. And we're on like a 60-day model, which is awesome. So people aren't getting day out in the field with the officer and then calling us every day trying to figure out when are they supposed to show up for court. And so when you talk about technology, the hard part about technology is a lot of times PD, animal control, code enforcement are all on different software platforms. And so trying to make sure when we do go out on the market that it'll interface and they can push stuff in to our system because they have different interests in what they need their software to do. But we are telling them at the end of the day, you still got to share it with us. And so when you want to go out and do e-citations, can that roll into our system? If not, we're still stuck on paper tickets. Or it gets hung up in a hangar and then we're paying this crazy amount of money. And so what we've been trying to do here is make sure that our communication with all of our partners who feed cases into our system, we're talking about that because we're about to go on the market again for new software. It's antiquated, and we need a system. And then moving to a digital platform to where some of our citizens or patrons who come in to handle business don't have to come to the building. That can reduce FTAs because a lot of times, you get a ticket, glove box, back seat, floorboard, wherever you can put it, it just goes somewhere. And so having text message reminders, having a digital platform for people to be able to go online and handle those disputes. I love a couple courts in Texas. I had the pleasure to view back in 2015. They were doing remote reporting from grocery stores. So you can go into your local grocery store, walk up to a kiosk, get dialed into a clerk, and the clerk brings a judge online, and you can resolve your matter right there. You found not guilty, you move on about your business. If you found guilty, they give you what the fine is. You can pay it right then, or they give you time to pay it. I thought that was phenomenal. The technology today has shifted so much, but trying to create those kind of pathways where people have better access to justice, because we know that there are some things that trip people up, but also remembering that there are still people who write checks. And so how do we still make sure that every patron that we have to touch has a mechanism or platform that works for them? And sometimes we can move too far and too fast in technology that we forget who we're actually serving. And so, when we're thinking about technology here, and even where I came from in Alabama, that was always the mindset because these are customers at the end of the day. And I always say if these customers stop coming in to do this business, we would have a problem, and it will be bigger than an FTA. because at the end of the day, we want people to kind of come in and reset. We have an expectation for most of community to just do right. If people get their tickets, we have an expectation for most people to just pay the speeding ticket. We also have this bucket of people who don't feel like they should have gotten it, whatever the case may be, whether they're sovereign citizens or people just don't believe the officer gave them the right ticket. And so we're always thinking about that from a technology perspective. We don't want to move faster than our consumer, and just being mindful of them and how we move and how people check in and what that process looks like. How do we onboard people? We had this thing where we say the justice system and the House of Justice and how people come in and what they should look like. We had a team member in the past had this idea of these green pants and paper pants, and so when people couldn't, they come in and they're dressed inappropriately. We would give them these paper pants and they can go into court, and judges were okay with that, because we're always trying to make sure that there is no barrier that keep people from coming in and taking care of the business that they came to take care of. Because if you got the nerve to come to the building, we need to process you through the process, and that's what we try to do every day. And so, the training component across the board, I think this is a great opportunity for NACM. I told the group when we were talking to look at all the states. Every state has an association, and every association has a president, and those associations know the members, and that's a whole pool of people for NACM to look at, and how we build a wing for community courts on NACM and be intentional about that, I think will help change the narrative.
We've got about 10 minutes left. We've heard from Jason and McKinta both about FTA issues and some strategies that have been used to address that. FTA issues were one of several issues that the smaller group talked about with respect to key trends and challenges. And so why don't we just open it up to folks now who have questions or experience, insights, things they might want to share with the group with respect to failure to appear issues. And the other thing we haven't talked about today, is language access issues and providing for timely and suitable interpreting services for people who need it. And then one other thing that came up, Jason, you raised it, was, and clarify this if I'm not getting it right, but in my notes, I've got it as jurisdiction issues. So changes in law that have been made that impact cases that are either coming into the municipal court or will be removed from municipal court, perhaps without full consideration of or consultation with municipal court leaders, so that state lawmakers know what the impact will be. So we throw those things out there and open it up to anyone who's joined us for the call this afternoon to share their thoughts on those issues or anything else we've talked about this afternoon. Yes, Melinda, go ahead.
Hi, I'm from Franklin County Municipal Court in Columbus, Ohio. And on the interpretation issues, I said two things that we've done might be tricky with current federal grants, but in the past, we've included in any federal grant that we applied for, whether it was for our self-help resource center or our specialized dockets or probation, we would incorporate some element of that to support interpreting services. But I know right now that is actually relatively excluded from current solicitations, but it won't be forever, hopefully. And then the other thing I would say is we came across some technology called Translate Live that is not appropriate for court functions. So we're being very careful about policy and how to handle it. It doesn't replace an interpreter at all. But we have a walk-in center where people would, it's open to walk-in folks who need assistance with job and family services, Medicaid applications, medically assisted treatment, assessments, things like that. And if they walked in unscheduled, we would be unable to just on the spot typically give them a certified interpreter because of just the chaos of our busy court. So this Translate Live thing is basically like a professional level Google Translate, if you will. It's like two iPads kind of A-framed together, and one faces each person, and it has a bunch of different languages and dialects. So I just want to share that as a potential resource for someone. I feel like it was like a $2,400 unit. We got a handful just scattered around the building for folks who just walk in and just need to be able to communicate more smoothly, to know what they need to then call an interpreter. But again, it's not for court, nothing, it's not meant to replace interpreters. It's just to get better service.
Thanks for sharing that, Melinda.
Yeah, and I think that may be the next millionaire, is somebody who can come up with that technology and build it into a software. I know I got the Meta glasses, and I can put those on. I mean, of course, we can't use them in court, but I can put the Meta glasses on, and it translates in real time. If I have a Spanish speaker standing in front of me, it is translating, and I can hear in English a translation of what that person's saying. So I'm sure those things can't be far away if they don't already exist.
Yeah, I like Melinda's point, but I think there's something we need to be mindful of too that she said that she didn't say, is this is not for court use in the courtroom. That's the complication across the states, because there is typically in most states a body that does the certification, and it's complicated. And so there's a lot of people who speak Spanish, but they can't get through the certification at the state level to get on the list for us to be able to use. And so even when you start talking about creating software, the state then has to approve that at some level for us to be able to use that so they're still managing how we do business. And so that makes it a lot more complicated, because I know some people who really, they speak Spanish, that's their heritage, but they couldn't pass the certification. And we can only use them, to Melinda's point, in certain pockets, but they couldn't go into the courtroom and actually translate and it actually be legal. And so we use a service that's been approved. It's on the state list, and so it's been pretty helpful for us. Language Associates is the group, but they're not at the tier level according to the state. And we've had some defense counsel complain and say that they don't think that they're providing the best service, but we're going by the state list. And so we get pushback in other areas saying it's not enough. And we're saying we're going by what we have that's available and we're doing something. And I think sometimes people who are trying to do what's right get pushed back from certain spaces. And it's like, okay, I know there's some people who are not doing anything at all, and there's not anything wrong with you telling us how we can improve, but at some point work with us. And so the solution is take away my tools, give me new tools. And I can't just start doing the work that you're asking me to do without new tools, because I think accountability can't be extracted from court. How do we hold people accountable at an equitable rate, not equal rate, equitable rate? And that creates fairness, because everything that goes towards a person has to be considerate of that person and what helps them get to the next phase.
If I may just add one quick comment on that. We just, in a manager's meeting just the other day, our interpreter services leader shared that they've been working with the Ohio State to help ensure that the folks who are being, studying to be interpreters are being basically taught to the tests that our Supreme Court requires them to pass to be a certified interpreter. So we finally incorporated just learning towards those standards, and they had the first person who went through that program, passed the tests that the Supreme Court puts in place to be a certified interpreter. So we're like trying to meet it at the education level.
Thanks, Melinda. We're about at time. I see we have at least one question that we didn't get to. Peter, I see yours about translation. Thank you for that. I'm going to make sure that the panelists see it. As I mentioned at the top, this is the first of two chats that are focusing on limited jurisdiction courts. The next one is scheduled for Friday, June 26th, 3:00 in the afternoon. And please email me or Whitney with questions, with suggestions about topics that you'd like to see us put on the agenda. I've been taking notes, and I suspect that some others have as well. Many of you, or some of you at least on today's call, I know were on last week's call where the focus of the chat was with the tribal courts, and the tribal courts are having another chat coming up on March 27th. And there's also a chat that's focused on federal courts that's going to be held on April 24th. I'm sure Whitney and Courtney, the membership committee, is going to be sending out more information with dates and other links, but wanted to make sure you all were aware of that. Thank you all so much for attending. Whitney, I'll turn it back over to you to close us up, but it was good to see you all. Thanks for your time. And Jason, Mankinta, Tracinda, I know we'll be in touch again, but thanks so much for your insights and your time this afternoon.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Scott has said. Thank you to you three. This has been so amazing to get this started and have our first one off the ground, and especially with you three being our panelists. It's just very appreciated. And yeah, Scott, thank you. Thank you for everyone attending, and we look forward to seeing you guys in April. And Makita, I am going to take your suggestion and reach out to all those state presidents and push out our invitation. I think that's a great idea that I haven't thought of. Thank you for that. All right, everybody have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us. See you in April.
So long. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.